Fairy Tail has a lot of different groups within the series, many of which are important to the overarching plot of the story, but one group has been mentioned from the very beginning of Fairy Tail up until the end, and that is the 10 Wizard Saints. The 10 Wizard Saints have been built up to be some of the strongest characters in Fairy Tail and the most important characters in Fairy Tail based off of how they've been talked about throughout the series and through certain members that we have seen from beginning to end. And even when someone just talks about one of the Wizard Saints, or even we see a Wizard Saint on screen, they are given a level of reverence that you need to pay attention to and just garners and wants your respect. So, we're going to go over what exactly the 10 Wizard Saints are and who their members are and how essentially you can become a member of the Wizard Saints in the Fairy Tail universe. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy what I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And you'll be notified whenever I upload next on every Friday for Fairy Tail. Also, I have a second channel called GW Comics where I talk about American comic books. That's almost at 1,000 subscribers right now. It's a passion project of mine. It's a lot of fun where I talk about some comics. If you like comic books in any regard, please go check it out. And if you want to see me talk about a bunch of different manga from different magazines, go and check out my weekly manga podcast, Shonen Pulse, on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, where me, Nox, and Yarogami talk about 9 separate manga from 3 different magazines on a weekly basis. That already surpassed 1,000 subscribers. And so we're going to try and ramp up the content on that as well, with shorts and live streams alongside our weekly reviews. So please go and check it out. Links to both of these channels will be in the description down below. Now, let's jump right into the video. So let's just get right into the point. What exactly are the 10 Wizard Saints? Well, baseline terms, like I mentioned at the beginning, they are the 10 strongest and most skilled mages in the entire continent of Ishgard. And so based off that, you would think that these are some of the strongest characters in all of Fairy Tail, or at least in the continent based off of that. Now, in order to become a member of the Wizard Saints, the mage must be granted this title by the Magic Council, specifically the Magic Council within the continent of Ishgard. Usually we tend to see the Magic Council within the context of the Kingdom of Fiore, but they are the Magic Council for the entirety of the continent of Ishgard. I'll probably make a separate video on the Magic Council, why they were formed, all that stuff later on. But the Magic Council is important for how you become a Wizard Saint. But the Magic Council is the key term here, because the only way for you to become a member of the 10 Wizard Saints is if you're appointed to that position, or more specifically that title, by the Magic Council. By that, the Council has to recognize you for your strength out of countless wizards. But there's another criteria that kind of goes over a lot of people's heads while going through Fairy Tail, and that is, they need to more or less be obedient to the Council, follow their rules, and the Council needs to see them as someone that they can trust and rely upon in times of crisis, or if there are just more, I say, ways of presenting authority or stability within the wizarding world. To an extent, you will see this as we go into the members of the Magic Council, but for an example, look at Gildarts. Gildarts is probably still top 5 strongest members in the Fairy Tail Guild, and probably still one of the 5 strongest characters in all of Fiore, if not Ishgard, at the end of Fairy Tail going into 100 Years Quest. And even when we got introduced to Gildarts, he was the strongest man in Fairy Tail. But he wasn't a member of the Wizard Saints. Makarov was, and Gildarts has been set up basically to be stronger than Makarov. So why wouldn't Gildarts be a member of the Wizard Saints? Well, it's because the guy can destroy an entire town if he falls down weird. The man is a literal catastrophe to the point where the city of Magnolia had to literally construct this massive Rube Goldberg machine-esque maze area so that he wouldn't basically destroy the entire town by accident by walking to the guild hall, and just gave him a straight clear path to the guild. They literally have a whole thing called the Gildart Shift so that he wouldn't do this stuff. He's also incredibly reckless, like any Fairy Tail wizard, and he doesn't exactly follow the rules. So even though strength-wise he would fit right in with the Wizard Saints, he is unreliable to the Council. They see him more as a troublemaker like most Fairy Tail wizards are to the Council, and he probably wouldn't follow a lot of the rules, laws, and regulations if you are a Wizard Saint and all that stuff, or even the imagery of the Wizard Saints that has been presented to many others to that degree. So strength is important to be a member of the Wizard Saints. You have to be recognized for your strength, but you also have to be recognized for someone that can in fact be relied upon by the council, help keep order, follow the rules, enforce the rules, or all that stuff, if times come to that degree. It's even to the point that by the end of Fairy Tail, like right after Tartarus going into Alvarez, the Magic Council was essentially destroyed, but the Magic Council got rebuilt thanks to, well, 4 members of the Wizard Saints that were still around by the end of the series, basically bringing the council back together with them as the center. The key law enforcement, or those that essentially holding the aptitude of the laws to the wizarding world. So yes, the Wizard Saints ended up going from just a group of characters that could essentially be called upon by the council or recognized by the council for their strength contributions to keeping balance and stability in the world of wizards on the continent, to now being basically the central figures and deciding factors of the laws and the security of the wizards and guilds in the entirety of Ishgard. So that kind of adds to how they are to be perceived, not just by their strength, but by being able to essentially enforce the rules, or at least show the right way to do things. It kind of like as an example of what a proper wizard should look like, based on how they do things with that strength and reverence. Another key important factor to think about when it comes to the Wizard Saints is that not even all of them are S-class wizards, and some of them aren't even members of guilds to begin with. As we'll see, there are other members of the Wizard Saints that actually haven't been stated to have been a part of any guild, present or past. Which also adds to another thing, that you don't have to be, essentially, part of a well-known or a currently active guild to be asked to be part of the Wizard Saints for your strength or your compatibility with the council and the world and all that stuff. Rolling on back to the strength aspect for the requirements for the Wizard Saints, the Wizard Saints are stated to be incredibly powerful, to the point where they can take on scores of average wizards and annihilate them completely. To the point where if 2 members of the Wizard Saints were to clash, it'd be stated to cause a cataclysm. That is how hyped up their strength is, especially at the beginning of the series, especially during Phantom Lord, where Jose and Makarov fought at the end of that arc, and that is how it is described. If the 2 fought 100% seriously, they would essentially be causing a cataclysm. And then by the time we get to the Arasho and Caesar arc, when we meet another member of the Wizard Saints known as Jura, he says that even though he is one of the newer members of the Wizard Saints, and we don't know when exactly he joined, it could either be after Tower of Heaven or it was right before, it's never given a clear timeline, he was stated at that moment to be one of the weaker members of the Wizard Saints, and that he was immensely weaker than Makarov. So, being a Wizard Saint also doesn't mean that you are all on the exact same level of power. The power average can be drastic between each member, like Jura and Makarov per statements, but post time skip after Tenral Island and into the Gray Magic Games, Jura moved up in terms of quote-unquote power to be one of the 5 strongest members of the Wizard Saints. And eventually one of the 4 strongest members of the Wizard Saints, which I will get to later on. But this brings us to the top tier, cream of the crop, the top echelon of the Wizard Saints, the 4 Gods of Ishgard. The 4 Gods of Ishgard are a group within the 10 Wizard Saints to be unequivocally and without question the strongest members of the Wizard Saints, stating to have levels of strength that dwarf previous members, lower ranking members of the Wizard Saints in comparison to them, as they are stated to be the 4 strongest wizards in the entirety of Ishgard, period. But again, even if they are incredibly strong, there are other wizards like Gildarts who we could see as potentially, or perhaps 100%, stronger than them, but just isn't recognized by the council to be a Wizard Saint due to their own criteria, and even still we don't know the full criteria to really be a member of the Wizard Saint, just to be more or less amicable to the council, the rules of the council and all that stuff, to keep order with the guilds and the citizens and all that, and also have immense strength and all that. So there's a lot to go into with that. Now, the Wizard Saints all essentially have these white coats, these very regal coats that are all white with a crest emblem of a cross with ornaments around it, which honestly really cool looking coat, and there's even a brooch and badge that all of them tend to have, but we mainly see this with Makarov. Whenever he gets serious, or whenever something big happens, he always puts on his Wizard Saint coat, basically saying, well, time to get serious, the real shit is about to start now. But now that that's out of the way, let's go on and talk about every single member of the Wizard Saints that we know. And out of all 10 Wizard Saints that are in the 10 Wizard Saints, past and future, we only know 8 of them. Yeah, for some reason, maybe it's because you couldn't come up with other characters, or because you didn't have a chance to, Mashima made up the 10 Wizard Saints, but he only came up with 8 characters throughout the entirety of Fairy Tail to be members of the 10 Wizard Saints. Even right now, at the end of Fairy Tail and going to 100's Quest, we don't know any more members of the Wizard Saints outside of who we already know. As far as current members of the Wizard Saints, we have, obviously, Makarov Dreyer, the current Master of Fairy Tail, Jura Nikes, Warred Sequin, Wolfheim, and Draculos Hyperion. Draculos Hyperion actually has a pretty sick design, not gonna lie, very Dracula-esque, obviously, with his name. And Wolfheim is kind of a old man. These two are the oldest members of the Wizard Saints outside of Makarov that we know of. But those are the 5 current members of the Wizard Saints that we know of thus far. Also, Warred is a former member of Fairy Tail, and other members like Wolfheim and Draculus don't seem to be affiliated with any guild whatsoever. So that's where we get the you don't have to be a part of a guild to be part of the Wizard Saints, unlike Makarov, Jura, and with other members of the Wizard Saints, like who I previously mentioned, Jose Poria, who was Phantom Lord's master, but got removed after basically everything that happened during the Phantom Lord arc, basically starting interguild conflict over a job, a whole bunch of scheming, and for we probably did a lot of other shady crap right now. Heck, minor spoiler in the 100's Quest manga. This could be nothing, but jump ahead to the timestamp up on screen if you don't want to get this minor spoiler, I guess. But right now in 100's Quest, Zero's back and he's fighting Gajiel, and he recognizes Gajiel as one of Jose's brats. And even says that Gajiel could have been an Oration. So there could always be the implication that with Zero knowing who Gajiel and Jose are, even giving the idea that Gajiel could have become an Oration if he saw him or something like that, it could imply that Jose was also having some underlying dealings with Oration Seis and Dark Guilds for all we know. It's not clear. I could be reading way too much into this. But that could also add to potential crap that Jose did behind the scenes, even though he was a Wizard Saint. Now, another member of the Wizard Saints that was a former member of the Magic Council, as well as a member of the Wizard Saints, was Seagrain, who, if we all know, was the separation of Jalal during this whole multi-year-long plan to get the Tower of Heaven, our system, running, having a split version of himself, masquerade as a wizard, becoming a Wizard Saint, masquerading as a member of the Council, and all that stuff. So, yeah, he was a former member of the Wizard Saints after that whole kerfuffle. So, obviously, his title was stripped from him, Jalal X Seagrain, for, obvious reasons. So, that's another member of the Wizard Saints from the past that is no longer with us right now. And the final member of the Wizard Saints that ended up leaving the Wizard Saints and turned a traitor to become part of the Spriggan 12 and the Alvarez Empire was God Serena, who, even when he was first talked about, all the way back, especially in Grand Magic games, he was stated to be the strongest wizard, the pinnacle of magic and power in the entire continent. So, yeah, at that point, God Serena was stated to be the strongest member of the Wizard Saints. He was the top of the 4 gods of Ishgard. But as stuff happened, with everything, tensions going on with Alvarez, he defected and decided to go with the Spriggan 12. So that happened as well. So, yeah, those are all the members of the Wizard Saints that we know of. 5 of which are still active, 2 of which, well, technically 3 of which are old men. And the previous 3 are either dead, in prison, or currently now stripped of their title and went through an entire redemption arc and is now being part of Fairy Tail. We have no idea who the other 2 to 8, essentially, Wizard Saints can be right now, because as far as we know, the 10 Wizard Saints probably isn't even a thing anymore. Or if it is, we don't know the other members, and I don't think Mashima really fully thought this entire group out as Fairy Tail went along, but it is what it is. Though it was stated, I believe it was post-Galuna Island, that Ultir's mother, Ur, Grey's master, could have been in consideration to be a member of the Wizard Saints. She had the strength and she had the tenacity and probably would have been someone that could have agreed with many things with the Magic Council in terms of keeping order and stuff, but she was more of a free spirit, so she never really wanted to become a Wizard Saint from all we know, and the Magic Council probably did not know where she was during certain aspects of her life to really end up, asking or recruiting to her, so we have no idea if she would even have said yes. And I'd be remiss not to mention this, but when Erza was having her whole near-death experience at the end of Tower of Heaven, she had a vision of her own funeral and the Magic Council making her an honorary member of the 10 Wizard Saints. After her supposed death in that vision, which I guess you could still be a Wizard Saint even when you're dead, if you need someone, or at least it's not an honorary title. I'm reading way too much into that, but yeah, that's another thing also. But that could also open the pathway for maybe Erza to be considered a Wizard Saint, especially now she's up there in power, and she wouldn't be opposed to upholding some of the rules of the Council in terms of keeping people safe, especially now that it's run by other members of the Wizard Saints right now, so we can end up looking into that for the future, if anything, but we don't know much else. But that's everything we know and that you need to know about the entirety of the 10 Wizard Saints, who they are, why they're Wizard Saints, and just how they became Wizard Saints, essentially, for all the information that we know thus far. What do you guys think of this video? Who do you think right now could be future members of the 10 Wizard Saints, or could become Wizard Saints at some point down the road? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, as well as other potential explained videos you'd like me to do in the future. And with all that said and done, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates of future videos and to be notified when I upload next time. Really helps and shows you guys you like what I make here on the channel and that you want to see more. And with that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.